The desert sun of Caraxes burned like fire over the great arena. Thousands of alien citizens filled the stands, their voices a low growl of excitement. They had come to see punishment, to watch pain, to cheer as chains broke the weak. The alien empire called these events lessons of order. To the human, Daniel Hayes, they looked more like cruelty dressed as entertainment. He sat among the prisoners, wrists bound in iron cuffs, his eyes scanning the wide circle of sand and stone. Daniel was a soldier of Earth, part of a small exploration team that had been ambushed months ago. His ship had been shot down. His comrades dead or scattered, he never knew. The aliens of Caraxes had captured him, stripped him of gear, and thrown him into their prisons. But he was not alone here. Today another prisoner stood in the arena's center. She was not human. Her skin shimmered with pale silver, her hair flowed like molten white metal, and her eyes glowed faintly blue. The crowd chanted her name with mockery. Lyra, Lyra, the defiant child, Princess Lyra of Caraxes. Daniel had only seen her once before through the bars of his cell, when guards dragged her past. Even then he could tell she was different, proud, unbent, refusing to bow her head. And for that, she was here today. The announcer's voice, booming and harsh, echoed across the arena. By command of the throne, Princess Lyra is found guilty of disobedience. She defied the law. She rejected her duty. And now she will suffer, as all must suffer when they break order. The crowd roared approval. Guards dragged in a long iron pillar and chains. They forced the princess to her knees. One soldier uncoiled a whip of metal thorns that gleamed under the sun. Daniel's chest tightened. He had seen punishment before in this empire. The whip tore flesh. It broke bone. The princess did not cry out. She raised her head, her jaw set like stone. The announcer shouted again. By tradition, the whip will fall 20 times. Let all who watch remember, order is pain, but pain brings obedience. The crowd cheered. Daniel felt his fists clench around the chains. He hated it. Hated their cheers, hated the guards' smirks, hated the way the princess was about to be broken just to make an example. The guard lifted the whip. Daniel's heart pounded. He told himself, stay quiet. You're just one man. You can't change anything, but then he saw her eyes. Lyra looked out over the crowd, defiant even as the whip hovered above her. She did not look afraid, but she looked alone. Something inside Daniel snapped. Before the whip could fall, he stood. Chains rattled and prisoners gasped. The guards turned, surprised. Daniel's voice rang out across the arena. Stop! The whip froze in the guard's hand. The announcer scowled, confused. The crowd murmured. Daniel took a step forward, dragging his chains. His voice was steady, loud enough to carry. If someone must take the punishment, then let it be me. Silence fell like a hammer. The announcer blinked. You, a human? You would take pain for her. Why? Daniel looked at the princess. Her eyes widened, a flicker of shock breaking her mask of calm. He turned back to the announcer and the crowd. Because no one should be beaten for courage. If you want blood, take mine. The arena erupted in confusion. Some shouted laughter, calling him a fool. Others booed. A few, just a few, fell quiet, uncertain. The guards hesitated, waiting for orders. The announcer sneered. Very well. If you wish to suffer, human, then suffer you shall. Let the crowd see your foolish bravery broken. The guards seized Daniel, dragging him into the arena. They chained him to the iron pillar where the princess had been. Lyra stared at him, disbelief and something else, something softer, shining in her glowing blue eyes. Daniel met her gaze and gave a small nod. The whip cracked. Pain exploded across his back like fire. He gritted his teeth but refused to cry out. The crowd cheered at first, but as the lashes fell one after another, some voices grew quiet. 10 strikes. His shirt was shredded, skin bleeding. 15 strikes. His knees shook, but he stayed upright. 20 strikes. He sagged against the chains, blood dripping down his back. Still he did not scream. The announcer's voice, less confident now, shouted, Let it be known. Even humans are broken by order. But Daniel raised his head. His face pale, eyes burning with pain, but his voice clear. You haven't broken me. Not today. The arena went silent. The guards unlocked the chains, letting him fall into the sand. He forced himself to stand again, swaying but unbowed. Princess Lyra stepped closer, the guards too stunned to stop her. She looked at him with wide eyes. Why? She whispered too softly for the crowd to hear. Daniel gave a weak smile. Because someone had to. The announcer shouted for the prisoners to be taken away, trying to regain control. The crowd still buzzed with confusion. Some jeered, others whispered to one another. But the old rhythm of cruelty was broken. As the guards dragged Daniel back toward the cells, his body burning with every step, he felt the weight of 1,000 alien eyes on him. He had done something none of them had expected. He had taken the beating meant for their princess. The prison cells beneath the Caraxes Palace were dark, damp, and filled with the stink of metal and blood. Chains clinked with every step the guards took, dragging Daniel through the narrow corridor. His back burned with every movement. 20 lashes from that whip had left his skin torn and raw. They threw him into a cell and slammed the gate shut. He fell to his knees, breath ragged, but he forced himself not to collapse completely. He did not want to give them the pleasure of seeing him broken. From the shadows across the cell block, a soft voice spoke. "You are either very brave, human, or very foolish." Daniel looked up. Princess Lyra stood at the bars of her own cell. Unlike him, she was not bloodied, but her wrists bore red marks from chains. Her glowing eyes watched him carefully, as if studying a puzzle. He gave a weak smile. "I've been called both before." For a long moment she was silent. Then she whispered, "No one has ever done what you did." "Not for me. Not for anyone here." Daniel leaned against the wall, closing his eyes for a second. "Where I come from, we don't let people suffer for nothing. If someone has to take the pain, better me than you." Her voice dropped lower, filled with something he couldn't quite name. "You shamed them today." The crowd. They did not know what to think. "My people do not understand sacrifice. They only understand obedience and fear. You showed them something else." Daniel opened his eyes again, meeting her gaze. "Maybe it's time they learn." Before she could answer, footsteps echoed down the hall. The guards returned, but this time they were not alone. A tall figure walked with them, wrapped in royal silks of black and crimson. A crown of gold and crystal rested upon her head. Her eyes, sharp as blades, glowed brighter than her daughter's. The queen. Every prisoner in the cells dropped to their knees. Even the guards bowed. Daniel stayed seated, too weak to rise, but he still lifted his chin defiantly. The queen's gaze swept over him, and for a moment, silence ruled the dungeon. Then she spoke, her voice smooth and commanding. "You are the human who bled for my daughter." Daniel's jaw tightened. He said nothing. The queen stepped closer to his cell. Her eyes studied him like one might study a strange and dangerous animal. "Most who come before me beg for mercy. You, however, you take pain that was not yours. Tell me why." Daniel forced himself to his feet, though his body screamed in protest. He gripped the bars with bloody hands and met her gaze. "Because it was wrong. Because no one deserves to be beaten for standing proud." A faint smile tugged at the corner of the queen's lips, though her voice remained cold. "You speak boldly for a man in chains. Do you not fear death?" Daniel shrugged. "Death doesn't scare me. Living without honor does." The queen's eyes narrowed, as though she was searching for weakness in him. Instead, she saw only fire. Finally, she turned slightly, addressing her guards. "Release him from the dungeon. I will speak with him in the court." The guards hesitated. "My queen, he is dangerous. Did I give you leave to argue?" Her voice cracked like thunder. The guards bowed quickly. "Forgive us, Majesty." The queen looked at Daniel one last time, her gaze sharp and heavy with something more than curiosity. Then she turned and swept out of the dungeon, her silks trailing behind her. Hours later, Daniel stood, still wounded but washed and dressed in plain robes, before the queen's throne. The great hall of Caraxes shimmered with marble columns and silver fires. Nobles gathered along the sides, whispering in disbelief that a human was allowed into the queen's presence. The queen sat high upon her throne, her crown gleaming, her presence filling the room like a storm. To her right stood Princess Lyra, her eyes flicking between her mother and the human. The queen's voice echoed across the chamber. "Daniel Hayes of Earth, you have caught the attention of my people. Some call you a fool, some call you brave. I must know which it is." Daniel bowed his head slightly, not in submission but in respect. "Maybe I'm both. But if standing against cruelty is foolish, then I'll stay a fool." Gasps spread through the nobles. None dared speak to the queen so directly. But she did not grow angry. Instead, her lips curved into the faintest smile. "You do not fear me?" she asked. "I fear no throne," Daniel answered. "Only the kind of power that uses pain to control." The queen leaned back, her eyes gleaming. "And yet here you stand, alive, because I chose not to end you. That is power too, human. Never forget it." Daniel met her gaze, unflinching. "Then maybe one day you'll learn that real power isn't in chains. It's in trust." The nobles erupted in shocked whispers. The guards tightened their grips on their weapons, ready for the queen's wrath. But instead of rage, laughter spilled from her lips. It was not kind laughter, but it was amused. "You are bold," she said softly. "Dangerously bold. I like that." Princess Lyra looked at her mother, alarm flickering in her eyes. The queen rose from her throne and stepped down toward Daniel. Her presence was overwhelming, each step heavy with authority. She stopped only a few feet from him, studying him as though deciding whether to crush him or keep him close. "You interest me, human," she said. "Few do. Perhaps fewer still have ever spoken to me with such fire. I see now why my daughter's punishment became memorable." Her eyes flicked toward Lyra, then back to Daniel. "But understand this, your life continues only because I allow it. Defy me again, and even your courage will not save you." Daniel inclined his head. "Fair enough." The queen's smile widened, faint but dangerous. "You will remain here in the palace. I wish to learn more about you, perhaps. You may even prove useful." The nobles whispered in shock. No outsider had ever been invited to stay within the palace walls. Princess Lyra's expression shifted, torn between relief that Daniel lived and unease at her mother's sudden interest in him. The queen turned away, sweeping her silks behind her as she returned to the throne. Her voice echoed once more through the hall. "Take him to chambers. Feed him, heal him. The human has earned my curiosity." The guards obeyed at once. As Daniel was led away, he glanced back. The queen sat tall, her gaze following him like a hawk. Princess Lyra met his eyes too, her face filled with silent questions. He did not know yet what game he had stepped into. But he knew one thing. The Queen of Caraxes desired to keep him close, and in this empire that was as dangerous as any battlefield. That night, Daniel sat in a chamber far better than any cell, his wounds cleaned and wrapped. He stared out the tall window at the alien city below. Glittering towers, glowing bridges, rivers of light running through the streets. Somewhere out there, people whispered about him. Some hated him, some admired him, and somewhere above them all, the queen was thinking about him. Daniel clenched his fists. He had survived the arena. He had caught the eye of the most powerful woman in this empire. But survival was only the beginning. He did not know if he was a prisoner, a guest, or a pawn. All he knew was this. Things were about to get much more dangerous. The palace of Caraxes was a place of beauty and fear. Marble walls rose high, painted with carvings of victories and obedience. Tall flames lit the endless corridors, and guards in silver armor stood at every corner. To outsiders it looked glorious, but Daniel could feel the weight of control in every stone. Days passed since the arena. His wounds healed slowly, though his back still burned whenever he moved too fast. Servants brought him food, far better than the dry scraps of prison. Yet he never forgot. He was still in enemy hands. The queen summoned him often. She asked questions about Earth, about human history, about why he chose to take the princess's punishment. Her eyes always searched for weakness, but Daniel never bowed. He spoke with honesty, sometimes even with sharp words. And the strangest thing, she did not punish him. She listened. Sometimes she laughed. Sometimes she only stared, as if trying to solve a riddle she could not understand. But in the shadows, others whispered. The nobles of Caraxes muttered about the queen's dangerous interest in the human. The generals frowned, warning each other that Daniel's presence was poison. The storm was building. One evening, Daniel walked in the palace gardens, escorted by 2 guards. The alien moon hung low in the sky, casting silver light on the strange trees with glowing leaves. The air smelled of sharp flowers, almost metallic. A soft voice called from behind a stone arch. "Human." Daniel turned. Princess Lyra stepped out from the shadows, her pale hair shining under the moon. She looked around carefully, making sure the guards kept their distance. "You should not speak to me so openly," she whispered. Daniel crossed his arms. "You were the one who called me." Her eyes softened. "Yes, because I need to warn you. The nobles and generals do not forgive easily. Your defiance in the arena made them look weak. And now, my mother's interest in you has made you a target. Daniel gave a small grin. I figured I wasn't winning any popularity contests. Lyra stepped closer, lowering her voice even more. You don't understand. In this empire, to catch the queen's eye is both honor and doom. If she grows too fond of you, the generals will act. They will not wait. They will remove you in secret. Daniel frowned. Then why tell me? You could let them try. Lyra hesitated, her glowing eyes uncertain. Then she whispered, because you changed something. When you stood in my place, when you bled for me, it spread. People talk about it even in the lower districts of the city. They whisper of a human who defied the whip. For the first time, they whisper of hope. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He had not planned any of this. He only wanted to stop cruelty. But now it was spreading like fire through dry grass. Hope is dangerous here, she continued. But maybe it is also needed. My people have lived in chains too long. Daniel studied her face. Are you saying you want change? Lyra looked away, her voice heavy. I was raised to obey, to serve order, to never question. But when you took that beating, something broke inside me. If one human could stand against the Empire, then maybe we can too. She looked back at him, eyes fierce. The nobles don't see it yet, but the younger ones, the servants, even the soldiers in training, they whisper, they watch you. Daniel let out a slow breath. And what about your mother? She seems to enjoy testing me. At the mention of the queen, Lyra's face grew tight. My mother. She is more dangerous than any general. Do not mistake her curiosity for kindness. She may admire you. She may even desire you. But she will never truly share her power. She rules with fear, and fear is the only language she trusts. Daniel's jaw clenched. Then maybe it's time someone taught her a new language. Lyra's eyes widened. For a moment she looked at him with something close to awe. Then, footsteps echoed nearby. The guards approached, suspicious. Lyra stepped back into the shadows. Be careful, human, she whispered. The game has begun. Then she was gone. The next day, Daniel stood again in the throne room. The queen sat tall, her eyes fixed on him as nobles lined the hall. The generals stood at her side, armored and grim. One of them, a broad alien with scars across his face, stepped forward. My queen, he said, his voice booming. This human is a threat. He spreads ideas of rebellion. He weakens discipline. He must be executed before his infection grows. The hall buzzed with whispers. Many nodded in agreement. The queen lifted her hand for silence. Her eyes never left Daniel. And what do you say for yourself, human? Do you seek to spread rebellion among my people? Daniel's voice rang out clear. I seek nothing but justice. If your people whisper, it is because they are tired of chains. If you fear their voices, perhaps it is not me you should fear. Gasps filled the hall. The nobles looked horrified. The generals' hands gripped their swords. But the queen, she laughed. A rich, dangerous laugh that echoed against the marble walls. You see, generals, he does not fear even me. Tell me, how can such courage be weakness? The scarred general growled. Courage is nothing if it poisons the empire. Let me end him now. The queen's eyes turned cold. You forget your place, general. This human is under my watch. Any hand raised against him is a hand raised against me. The general fell silent, but his glare promised violence. The queen looked back at Daniel. Your words are sharp, human, perhaps too sharp. Yet I find I cannot silence them. Not yet. She leaned forward, her gaze piercing. Tell me then, if you were in my place, what would you do with power? Would you rule with chains, or with trust, as you claim? Daniel met her stare. I would give people the chance to stand on their own, because when you stop beating them into fear, you may find they'll stand with you willingly. That's real strength. For a long moment, the queen said nothing. The hall held its breath. Then slowly she leaned back on her throne. A strange smile touched her lips. Interesting, she murmured. Very interesting. That night, Daniel returned to his chambers, but sleep would not come. He knew the general's hatred was growing. He knew the queen's interest was a double-edged blade, and he knew the whispers outside these walls were spreading faster than anyone realized. From the shadows of the city below, he could hear faint chants drifting through the air. At first he thought it was his imagination, but then he listened closely. The voices of workers and servants carried on the night wind. The human who bled, the human who stood, the human who would not bow. Daniel clenched his fists. The empire was beginning to stir, and he was at the center of it. But he also knew one truth. When people whisper too loudly, the powerful always strike back. The storm was coming. The palace of Caraxes glowed under the alien moon, but inside its walls shadows grew heavy. Rumors of rebellion spread through the city like sparks on dry leaves. Servants whispered about the human who defied the whip. Soldiers muttered that courage might be stronger than fear, and the generals, proud and ruthless, grew restless. They gathered in secret chambers, speaking in harsh tones. The scarred general named Varric slammed his fist on the table. The queen is blinded. This human infects her court with dangerous ideas. If we wait longer, the people will rise. We must kill him even if it means defying her. The others hesitated, but Varric's anger carried weight. If the queen refuses to protect the empire, then we must. The human dies tonight. Daniel could not sleep. He sat by the window of his chamber, watching the glowing city below. His back still ached from old wounds, but it was not pain that kept him awake. It was the feeling that eyes watched him from every corner, that the palace itself breathed like a trap. A soft knock came at his door. He tensed. The guards never knocked. Human, whispered a voice. It was Princess Lyra. He opened the door quickly and pulled her inside. Her face was pale, her eyes sharp with fear. They are coming for you, she said. The generals have decided. Tonight they will end you. Daniel's jaw tightened. So soon? They fear what you've started, she whispered. The whispers, the hope. They want to silence it before it grows louder. Daniel grabbed the small dagger he had hidden from a careless servant. It was barely a weapon, but it was something. I suppose I should be honored they're this afraid of me, he muttered. Lyra's hand caught his arm. You cannot fight them alone. They will send assassins, many of them. You must escape, Daniel shook his head. Escape where? I don't know this world. I'll be hunted down before I reach the city gates. Lyra hesitated, then spoke with firm voice. Then I will fight with you. Daniel looked at her, surprised. You against your own generals? Her eyes burned with resolve. If they kill you, they kill hope. And if hope dies, then my people will remain in chains forever. I will not let that happen. For a moment, silence hung between them. Then Daniel nodded. All right, princess. We fight together. The attack came quickly. The chamber doors burst open with a crash. Dark-armored assassins rushed in, blades gleaming under the torchlight. Their faces were hidden behind masks, their movements swift and deadly. Daniel shoved Lyra behind him as the first assassin lunged. Steel clashed against his dagger. Sparks flew. He pushed hard, forcing the alien back. Another came from the side. Lyra grabbed a fallen spear from the wall and struck, surprising the assassin with her speed. Stay close, Daniel shouted, parrying another blow. The room became chaos. Blades cut the air, torches flickered, blood spattered across marble. Daniel fought with desperate fury, every movement driven by survival. He was slower, weaker than the assassins, but his will burned brighter. Lyra fought beside him, her face fierce. For the first time, she raised her weapon not in ceremony, but in true defiance. One assassin fell, then another, but more poured in. Daniel's arms grew heavy, his wounds reopened. He staggered, barely blocking a killing strike. Then a voice thundered through the chamber. Enough! The assassins froze. The queen herself stood at the doorway, her crown catching the firelight, her eyes glowing like molten steel. The assassins dropped to one knee. Varric, the scarred general, stepped forward boldly. My queen, we acted only to protect the empire. The human corrupts your court, your daughter. Silence! The queen's voice shook the walls. Her gaze swept over the scene. The blood, the bodies, the human standing wounded but unbroken. The princess clutching a weapon with trembling hands. Her eyes narrowed. You dare to defy me in my own palace? You dare to strike without my command? Varric did not bow. His voice rang with fury. You are blinded, Majesty. This human weakens you. He must die before he destroys us all. The queen stepped forward, her presence filling the room like fire. And yet, you could not kill him. He stands while your assassins lie broken. Tell me, Varric, who is the weak one now? Gasps spread among the nobles who had gathered outside the chamber, drawn by the noise. Varric growled, pointing his blade at Daniel. He will bring rebellion. He will destroy the Empire. Daniel's voice, hoarse but steady, cut through the hall. You're wrong. I won't destroy your empire. I'll free it. The crowd of nobles whispered in shock, some with fear, some with awe. The queen's eyes flickered, unreadable. Then she turned her gaze on Varric. You have betrayed my rule. Guards, seize him. The palace guards, uncertain but obedient, stepped forward. Varric snarled and fought, but he was overwhelmed. Chains clamped around his arms. The queen raised her hand. Take him to the dungeons. His fate will be decided at dawn. The assassins lowered their heads, retreating. The nobles bowed, murmuring. The chamber slowly emptied, leaving only Daniel, Lyra, and the queen. For a long moment, silence reigned. The queen looked at Daniel. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with something fierce. You survived an attack meant to end you. You stood beside my daughter and defied the strongest of my generals. Do you see now why I find you fascinating? Daniel met her gaze, still breathing hard, blood dripping down his arm. I didn't fight for your fascination. I fought because it was right. The queen's lips curved in a dangerous smile. And that is why you are unlike any man in this empire. Lyra stepped forward, her voice sharp. Mother, can't you see? The people whisper because they want freedom. Daniel showed them a different path. If we don't change, rebellion will come whether we like it or not. The queen studied her daughter, then looked back at Daniel. For the first time, something like conflict flickered in her eyes. She was torn, between her empire of fear and the strange fire this human carried. Finally, she spoke. Very well. Tomorrow the council will gather. Let us see how much strength your hope truly has. If the people dare to stand with you, then perhaps the empire itself will change. But if not, her gaze turned cold, then even your courage will not save you. She swept from the chamber, her silks whispering against the marble floor. Daniel sank against the wall, breathing hard. Lyra knelt beside him, binding his arm with a strip of cloth. You realize what this means? She whispered. Daniel gave a tired grin. Yeah, tomorrow decides everything. She looked at him, her eyes filled with both fear and admiration. You're not like us. You refuse to bow. You refuse to give up. That is why they whisper about you. That is why even my mother cannot ignore you. Daniel met her gaze. It's not about me. It's about your people. They've been living in chains too long. If tomorrow gives them a chance, then we'll stand together. Outside the palace, the city was alive with murmurs. Servants, workers, even low-born soldiers spoke of the night's attack, of the human who survived, of the princess who fought beside him. The night passed slowly. Torches burned in every corner of the palace, and whispers filled the halls like restless winds. The news had already spread across the city. The human had survived the assassins, the princess had fought beside him, and the queen herself had called for a council at dawn. Daniel did not sleep. His body ached, his wounds burned, but his mind stayed sharp. He knew the morning would decide not only his life, but the fate of an empire. Princess Lyra sat with him, her head resting against the wall, her eyes heavy with worry. Do you think the council will listen? She asked softly. Daniel looked out the window where the alien moon was fading and the first pale light of dawn touched the horizon. I don't know, but I do know this. If no one speaks for freedom, nothing will ever change. Lyra gave a small smile. You sound more like a leader than a prisoner. Daniel chuckled weakly. I didn't come here to lead, I just couldn't stay silent. The council chamber was vast, its walls carved from black stone, its ceiling so high it vanished into shadows. At the center stood the throne where Queen Seraphis sat in her full regalia, her crown shining like fire. Around her the high nobles and generals gathered, their robes heavy with jewels, their eyes cold with judgment. Daniel was brought in, his wrists bound with golden chains, but his back was straight, his gaze steady. Lyra walked behind him, her chin raised, refusing to show fear. The chamber was full, not only nobles but guards, scribes, even servants who had slipped in to witness history. Outside in the city squares, crowds had gathered, waiting for word of what would happen. Queen Seraphis raised her hand. The hall grew silent. This day will decide much, she said, her voice carrying across the chamber. This human defied the whip. He stood for my daughter. He fought against those who would kill him. Some call him a danger. Some call him hope. Let us hear his words before judgment is passed. She gestured, and the guards stepped back. Daniel was left standing alone in the center of the hall, all eyes fixed on him. Daniel took a slow breath. He could feel the weight of every gaze, the fear, the doubt, the curiosity. He had no crown, no army, no power, only his voice. You all know why I am here, he began, his voice strong despite the chains. I was brought as a slave. I was beaten for protecting someone who could not defend herself. I was told to bow, to stay silent, to accept chains as if they were natural. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Daniel continued. But I would not bow. And when I stood, others began to whisper, not because I am stronger, not because I am special, but because courage is a fire. It spreads. It reminds people that chains are not natural, that fear is not eternal, that freedom is possible. He turned slowly, meeting the eyes of nobles, guards, even the servants hiding near the doors. You fear rebellion, he said. But rebellion will come no matter what. If you keep ruling with whips and fear, the people will rise in blood. But if you give them a chance, if you let them stand as free people instead of slaves, you will not have rebellion. You will have loyalty. You will have a nation, not an empire of chains. The silence grew heavier. Even the most hardened nobles shifted uncomfortably. Finally, Daniel's voice dropped lower, steady as stone. You call me dangerous. Maybe I am. Because truth is dangerous to lies. Hope is dangerous to fear. Freedom is dangerous to tyranny. But if that is danger, then it is the kind this world needs. He finished and stood tall, waiting. The chamber erupted in noise. Nobles shouted, generals argued, some calling for his execution, others demanding he be spared. The queen sat unmoving, her face unreadable, her eyes fixed on Daniel. Princess Lyra stepped forward. Mother, council, hear me, she said. I was raised to obey, to accept silence. But when Daniel stood for me, I saw something greater than obedience. I saw what my people could be if we were free. If he dies today, then you kill not only a man, you kill hope itself, the crowd gasped. A princess had never spoken against the council before. One general sneered. Hope will not feed the empire. Discipline keeps order. But another noble, old and weary, rose slowly. Order without justice is only a slower death. The people already whisper. If we silence him, the whispers will turn to screams. The council fractured. Some shouted for freedom, some for chains. The hall shook with voices clashing like blades. Then the queen rose. At once, silence fell. She walked slowly to where Daniel stood, her steps echoing. She looked at him long and hard, as if weighing every word he had spoken, every act he had done. Finally, she spoke. You are unlike any man I have known. You do not beg. You do not bow. You speak as if the world itself must listen. And perhaps it should. She turned to the council. From this day forward, the empire will change. The whip will no longer rule. Slaves will earn freedom through service. No longer will chains define us. Gasps filled the chamber. Some nobles cried out in protest, but others cheered. The guards looked at one another, uncertain, but many felt relief. The queen raised her hand. And as for this human, her gaze returned to Daniel. He is no longer a slave. He is free. The chains around his wrists were struck off, falling to the floor with a heavy clatter. The sound rang across the chamber like thunder. The crowd outside, who had waited in fear, erupted when the news spread. Cries of joy shook the streets. For the first time in centuries, the people felt something greater than fear. They felt the weight of chains lifting. That night, the city glowed with firelight, not from rebellion, but from celebration. The people gathered in the squares, singing, cheering, daring to speak without fear. Daniel stood on a balcony, looking down at the sea of faces. Lyra stood beside him, her smile bright with hope. You changed everything, she whispered. Daniel shook his head. No, your people did. I just reminded them what they already knew, that they deserve more than chains. Behind them, the queen approached. Her eyes softened as she looked at Daniel. You were right, she said quietly. Fear can build an empire, but only hope can keep it standing. Daniel turned to her, surprised by the gentleness in her voice. She studied him for a long moment, then added, And you have a place here if you wish it. Not as a slave, not as a prisoner, but as something more. Her meaning was clear. The queen desired him not just as a man, but as a symbol of strength beside her throne. Daniel met her gaze, then looked at Lyra. The princess smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. For the first time, Daniel realized the choice before him was not only about freedom for the people, it was about his own heart. He looked back at the queen, then at the city below. The night was alive with voices shouting his name, voices filled with hope. His path was no longer chains, no longer silence. His path was fire,